The space station orbiting Earth was overcrowded, loud, and cold. In docking Sector 7, refugees from dozens of broken worlds stood in long lines. Most had lost their homes. Some had lost more. Jason Cole stood quietly near the back of the food line. His brown jacket was patched in 3 places. A tool belt hung loosely from his side. He was a mechanic. Nothing special. Just another Earthborn trying to survive. But today, something strange happened. Behind him, near the edge of the wall, stood a girl. Not human. Her skin was pale green, soft, like sea glass. Her eyes were silver, glowing slightly in the dim station lights. Her clothes were torn, her arms thin. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days. Everyone saw her. No one helped. Jason looked at her, really looked. She didn't speak. She didn't beg. She just stood there, quiet and shaking. He frowned. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something wrapped in foil. It was small, old. The last thing he had saved from Earth's surface. A chocolate bar. Jason glanced at it, then back at the girl. He stepped out of line, walked toward her. People stared, but he didn't care. When he reached her, she took a small step back. Her eyes darted to the floor. Jason knelt down slightly so he wouldn't tower over her. "Hey," he said gently, "are you okay?" She didn't answer. He unwrapped the chocolate bar halfway, then offered it to her. "It's sweet," he said. "It helps on bad days." She looked at it, then at him. Slowly, cautiously, she reached out and took it. Jason smiled. She sniffed the bar. A strange look came over her face. Then she took a small bite. Her eyes went wide. She gasped softly, then her lips trembled. She looked like she might cry. Jason watched, surprised by her reaction. "It's just chocolate," he chuckled. "Not a big deal," but she didn't laugh. She stared at him, her hands trembling as she held the half-eaten piece. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, in a quiet voice filled with emotion, she whispered, "Jason." His heart stopped. He hadn't told her his name. He hadn't spoken it. Not once. He straightened slowly. "How do you know my name?" he asked, his voice low. She didn't answer. She looked down, her silver eyes glowing brighter. Before he could ask again, the crowd shifted. The food line moved forward. A guard shouted something in the distance. Jason turned his head briefly. When he looked back, she was gone, vanished. The chocolate wrapper was still in his hand, rustling slightly in the recycled air. Jason stood there, confused, staring into the crowd. She hadn't looked poor when she disappeared. She had looked powerful, elegant, even dangerous. He turned to leave, walked back to the engineering bay, but his mind was spinning. Who was she? Why did she know his name? And why did a simple chocolate bar make her react like that? What Jason didn't know, what no one knew, was that the girl wasn't just another hungry alien refugee. She was the last living heir of the Varelian Empire, a royal bloodline thought lost forever. To her people, chocolate was not food. It was a symbol, a sacred gift used only in ancient bonding rituals. By giving her that bar, Jason had unknowingly performed a vow of loyalty, a vow of trust, a vow that could never be broken. And now, the girl was bound to him, her life, her destiny, her empire, all tied to the kindness of one human, Jason Cole. Jason Cole couldn't stop thinking about her all night. The memory of her silver eyes stayed in his mind, the way she said his name, the way she disappeared. He had seen strange things before, worked on broken ships, patched up old alien tech, even crawled inside engines that hummed with ancient power. But never anything like her. He didn't even know her name. The next day, Jason returned to work in the lower engineering bay of the station. The lights flickered, the oxygen regulators wind. He sighed and rolled up his sleeves. Then he heard something behind him, footsteps, light, careful. He turned. There she was, standing in the doorway. holding a damaged energy coil, like she belonged there. His heart skipped. "You found me," he said, softly taut. She stepped forward and placed the coil on the table. Her hands moved quickly, almost too fast to follow, rewiring a broken connection. Jason blinked. "You're an engineer now." Still no smile from her, but her voice was clearer today. "Not engineer. I learned by watching." Jason leaned closer. "Who are you?" She paused, then said Reelan. He repeated it. The name felt strange, yet beautiful. "Real. Why did you run yesterday?" She didn't answer. Instead, she looked down at her hands, now stained with grease. She wiped them on her sleeve. Then slowly, she asked, "Why did you give it to me?" Jason frowned. "The chocolate." She nodded. "I don't know," he said. "You looked hungry. It was my last one, but you needed it more than I did." She stared at him. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You gave me a royal offering." Jason laughed softly. "It was just chocolate." But her expression didn't change. "To you, yes," she said, "but not to me, not to my people." Jason stepped back, confused. She placed one hand over her heart and spoke in her own language. Just a few words, soft, melodic. Then she looked into his eyes. "You bound me," she said. "What does that mean?" Before she could explain, the station lights dimmed. A red warning flashed on the wall. Jason's comm buzzed. A voice crackled through. "Attention crew. Unregistered ships have entered the outer perimeter. Maintain your duties. Do not engage." Jason and Reelan exchanged a glance. Then she whispered something that made his blood run cold. "They found me." He stepped forward. "Who? Who's looking for you?" She backed toward the door, voice shaking. "I have to go. I've stayed too long." Jason reached for her arm. "Wait, just tell me the truth, please." She stopped. Reelan turned slowly. Her silver eyes met his one last time. "I am not poor. I am not lost." "Then who are you?" Jason asked. Her voice barely held steady. "I am the last daughter of the Varelian Star Throne, and they want me dead." Before Jason could react, she vanished again. Moved like wind through the metal halls. Alarms echoed in the distance. More ships were docking. Jason stood frozen in the middle of the bay, heart pounding. Royalty, a throne, and somehow, he was now part of it. The girl he gave his last chocolate bar to was the key to something far bigger than he understood, and others were coming for her. Jason Cole sat alone in the dark, cold silence of his quarters. The only light came from the small blinking display on his wall. The station had gone into partial lockdown. Unregistered ships had docked hours ago, and now the air was thick with fear. He hadn't seen Reelan since she vanished from the engineering bay, but he couldn't stop thinking about her. The way she looked at him, the way she said she wasn't poor, that she was royalty, that they wanted her dead. None of it made sense. Jason rubbed his face and stood up. He was about to leave when he heard it, a soft knock on the door, 3 gentle taps. He opened it. Reelan stood there, breathing hard, her hood pulled low over her head. Her silver eyes were dimmer than before, and a thin cut ran across her cheek. Without a word, she stepped inside and locked the door behind her. Jason froze. "What happened to you?" She leaned against the wall, shaking. Her hands were bruised. Her clothes looked burned. "In some places, I ran. I fought," she said. "But they're close now. They're watching every hallway." Jason pulled a chair over and helped her sit. "You need help," he said. She looked at him, eyes tired but fierce. "I need to tell you the truth. All of it, before it's too late." Jason nodded slowly. Reelan took a long breath. "My people, the once ruled 1,000 systems. We were proud, strong, but we were cruel. We controlled everything through fear, through power." Jason leaned in, listening carefully. She continued. "My mother, the Empress, wanted peace. She tried to end the wars. She tried to share our technology. That's why they killed her. Jason's eyes widened. They killed your mother. She nodded. They called her a traitor, said she was weak, but all she wanted was unity. Her voice cracked. I was smuggled out during the attack. A servant helped me escape. I've been hiding ever since. Jason stepped closer. Why come here? To this station. She looked up. Because Earth was her dream. She believed humans were the future. She said your people had something the galaxy had forgotten. What's that? Jason asked. Reelan gave a sad smile. Kindness. Jason sat down across from her. And the chocolate? He asked. Her face turned serious. In my culture, chocolate is rare, sacred, used only in the oath of trust. A bond once shared only between family, or between protectors and the royal bloodline. Jason blinked. You mean when I gave you that bar? She nodded. You performed the bond. You gave me protection without knowing who I was. By our law, I am now bound to you. I must protect your life with mine. Jason stared at her, stunned. His voice was quiet. I didn't know. I was just trying to be decent. She smiled. That's why it matters. Suddenly, a sharp noise rang outside the door. Footsteps, voices. Jason jumped to his feet. Reelan stood as well, eyes alert, hand reaching inside her coat. They've found me, she whispered. Jason looked around his room. Nowhere to hide. No weapons. No time. She grabbed his hand. I won't let them take you, she said firmly. Not after what you did. Jason squeezed her hand. Then we run. Together. They opened the small maintenance hatch near the floor and crawled inside. Just seconds before the door to his room was forced open. Metal boots stomped in. Soldiers with black armor and golden emblems searched the room. One of them picked up a scrap of foil from the ground, the remains of a chocolate wrapper. He held it up and spoke into his communicator. She was here, inside the vents. Jason and Reelan moved quietly through the narrow tunnel. He looked back at her, her royal blood, his simple kindness. Two strangers connected by something bigger than war, power, or empires, by something human, something rare, something true. Jason Cole didn't remember the moment they were separated. 1 second. He was crawling through the maintenance vent behind Reelan. The next. The wall exploded. He had shielded her with his body. That was the last thing he remembered. Now he was waking up on cold metal. His hands were bound behind him. The room was silent, except for the humming of engines and the low echo of alien voices beyond the steel door. Jason sat up slowly. His head throbbed. His clothes were singed. He was alone. This wasn't the space station anymore. Wherever he was, it belonged to them. The door opened with a loud hiss. 3 soldiers stepped in, Varelian remnants. Their armor was dark gray, marked with gold lines. Their faces were hidden behind polished masks. One of them spoke. You are the human. Jason said nothing. Another stepped closer and held up a tablet. On the screen was a still image, him handing the chocolate bar to Reelan. You performed. The bond? You offered the royal gift. Did you know what you were doing? Jason's voice was quiet but steady. No, I just gave her food. The soldier slammed a tablet on the floor. Sparks flew. You gave her more than food, he growled. You gave her power. Jason didn't understand. None of this made sense. He leaned forward. Where is she? The soldiers didn't answer. They turned and left, sealing the door behind them. Jason sat back against the wall. His heart was racing, but he refused to panic. He had seen worse in the engineering bays. Fires, explosions, zero gravity, blackouts. But this was different. This was war, and somehow, he was in the center of it. Somewhere far away, Reelan was tracking them. She had survived the blast, burned, bruised, but alive, and angry. Wearing stolen armor, She slipped onto the enemy cruiser during their departure from the station. She hid in the shadows, moving silently through the corridors, her mind focused on one thing. Jason. He had saved her, protected her, bonded with her. Now she would do the same. She climbed through the vents, rewired doors, and disabled cameras with tech that hadn't been used in generations. She was more than a princess now. She was a warrior, a survivor, a protector. Meanwhile, back in the cell, Jason heard footsteps again. The door opened, but this time only one figure entered, an older alien, face uncovered, with pale gray skin and sharp yellow eyes. He wore ceremonial robes, not armor. He looked at Jason with curiosity. "You are calm. Most prisoners are not." Jason shrugged. "I fix reactors for a living. This isn't the worst room I've been in." The alien gave a strange smile. "You bonded with the air. Do you know what that means?" Jason shook his head. "She told me a little. Not enough." The alien leaned closer. "She was meant to bond only with one of her own, a chosen leader. But now, she's bound to you, a human." Jason raised his chin. "Is that a problem?" The alien's eyes gleamed. "It is prophecy." Jason frowned. "What prophecy?" Before he could answer, a loud alarm rang through the ship. Emergency lights flashed. The alien turned sharply toward the door. "She's here," he muttered. Reelin moved like lightning through the ship. Blades of plasma glowed in her hands. Her eyes burned with silver fire. Guards tried to stop her. None could match her speed. She was not hiding anymore. She was coming for Jason. The alien in the cell looked back at Jason, then at the door. He reached forward, pressed a button on the wall, and Jason's bindings fell loose. "Why are you helping me?" Jason asked. The alien gave a slow, careful smile. "Because if she chose you, perhaps our future is not lost." Suddenly, the door burst open. Reelin stepped inside. Her armor was damaged. Her arm was bleeding, but she was standing tall. Her eyes locked on Jason. Without a word, she ran to him. He caught her in his arms, holding her tightly. "You came back," he whispered. "I said I would." They didn't have time for more. She turned to the old alien. "We need to leave. Now." He nodded. "This way." As alarms screamed around them, the three ran through the burning halls of the enemy ship, toward a stolen fighter ready for launch. Behind them, the war was just beginning, but for now, they were free together, bound by a gift, once given in kindness, and now strengthened by something deeper, love. The stolen fighter ship trembled as it broke free from the enemy cruiser. Its hull was damaged. One wing was scorched. Warning lights flashed across every console, but they made it. Jason Cole sat in the co-pilot's seat, gripping the edges of the chair, heart pounding. His hands were still shaking from the escape. Beside him, Reelin held the controls, her face calm but focused. Blood still ran down her arm from a cut she hadn't had time to heal. Smoke filled the small cockpit. Jason turned to her. "Are we being followed?" She shook her head. "Not yet, but they will come. We need to disappear." The stars stretched around them as the ship entered the outer rings of a red dwarf system. Jason looked out the window and saw the swirling colors of a nebula in the distance. It was beautiful, and it was empty. No tracking signals, no patrols, just silence. Reelin guided the ship into the dark side of a shattered moon, hiding behind its gravity shadow. She powered down everything except life support. The engines went quiet. They were finally alone. Jason leaned back, breathing slowly. The silence felt strange after everything they'd been through. Reelin stood and opened the storage locker behind the seats. She pulled out a small medical kit and began patching the wound on her arm. Jason got up and walked to her. "Let me help?" She looked up at him, then slowly nodded. He knelt beside her and took the kit in his hands. Carefully, gently, he cleaned the cut and wrapped a silver band around it. Their hands touched for a moment. Neither pulled away. Why do you keep doing this? She asked softly. Jason looked at her. What do you mean? You don't run from me. You don't treat me like a weapon or a queen. You just stay. He smiled. Maybe I like you. She laughed quietly, a sound he hadn't heard from her before. It was soft, real. Jason sat back on the floor of the ship. Rialan sat across from him, both of them surrounded by blinking lights and quiet air. For the first time in days, there was no running, no fighting, just breath, just silence, just the two of them. She pulled something from her coat, the chocolate wrapper, folded, torn, but saved. I never told you what this means, she said, holding it between her fingers. Jason watched her closely. It's more than a gift, she said. It's a vow, a promise of loyalty, yes, but also trust, emotion, hope. Jason raised an eyebrow. Are you saying I accidentally married you with candy? She smiled again. Not quite. But you gave me something I never had. What's that? A choice. Jason didn't know what to say, so he didn't speak. He just reached into his pocket, pulled out a small, half-broken protein bar, and offered it to her. It's not chocolate, he said, but I'm still willing to share. Rialan took it, laughing gently as she bit into the dry corner. They sat in the middle of that quiet ship, trading bites of old food like children, sharing secrets. Jason looked at her for a long time. Her silver eyes reflected the glow of distant stars. Her green skin seemed to shimmer softly in the dim light. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with shape or symmetry. It was the way she looked at him, with trust, with courage, with something that felt like love. I don't know what happens next, Jason said. Rialan nodded. Neither do I. But whatever it is, he continued, I want to face it with you. She leaned forward slowly. Their foreheads touched, no sound, no words, just connection, just warmth, and in that quiet space, in the shadows of broken moons and forgotten galaxies, something rare began to grow. Hope, not just for them, but for something bigger, something worth fighting for. The stolen ship drifted silently through space as Earth came into view. Blue, bright, alive. For Rialan, it was her first real look at humanity's home, not just from old charts or intercepted broadcasts. This was the real thing, the world her mother once believed in. Beside her, Jason sat in the pilot's seat, eyes fixed on the planet below. We made it, he whispered. Rialan nodded, her voice soft. It's beautiful. As they entered Earth's orbit, a series of alarms lit up across the console. Jason sighed. Here come the patrols. A squad of human fighters surrounded them within minutes. Jason sent the override code given to him during his engineering days. It worked, barely. The lead pilot responded through comms. Unregistered ship. Identify yourself. Jason leaned into the mic. This is Jason Cole, civilian engineer. I'm requesting landing clearance and protection. A pause. Protection from what? The voice asked. Jason looked at Rialan. From an empire that wants to kill the girl sitting next to me. There was another long pause. Then a new voice came through. Mr. Cole, we've been expecting you. They landed at an isolated government facility, hidden in the Arctic Circle. Not a city. Not a base, but a vault. Inside, Jason and Rialan were met by Earth's top council. Leaders from science, defense, and diplomacy stood behind armored glass. No one dared stand too close. Rialan stood tall, calm, her royal blood obvious now in the way she held herself. Her presence filled the room like gravity. One of the council members, a gray-haired woman named Director Malik, spoke first. You are Rialan of the Varelian line. Rialan nodded. Last of my blood, and you bonded with a human. Willingly. I did. Jason stood beside her. He didn't wear a uniform or badge, just his old jacket. but he stood like someone who belonged. Director Malik looked at him. You realize this makes you a political target. You've brought an empire's war to our doorstep. Jason didn't blink. I also brought the only person who can stop it. Another council member leaned forward. And why would she help us? Before Jason could speak, Reland stepped forward. Because your world still believes in kindness. Because when I was lost, your people didn't ask who I was. One of you gave without expecting anything in return. She looked at Jason. Because he did. The room went quiet. Then Director Malik turned away from the glass and spoke to her. Aides. Draft the terms. Begin the alliance process. News spread across Earth in hours. The lost heir had returned, and she was protected by Earth. The galaxy shook. Some called it rebellion, others called it prophecy. Within days, fleets moved. Old Varelian warlords gathered. A message was sent to Earth. Surrender the girl, or burn. Earth didn't surrender. They stood, and they stood beside her. For the first time in human history, Earth was at the center of something bigger than survival. They were part of a legend. Jason and Reland watched the news from a secured facility deep beneath the surface. She sat on the floor, tracing old Earth maps with her fingers. Jason brought her tea, unsure if she liked it, but she always accepted it. You started something big, Jason said. Reland looked up. No, you did, with one small act. Jason sat beside her. You really think this can work? She turned to him. I think the galaxy has feared power for too long. Maybe it's time they follow something else. Like what? She leaned closer, whispered. Compassion. Jason smiled. That's a big word for a mechanic. She laughed. It's big enough for a queen. He leaned in. She didn't pull away. Their lips met in a quiet kiss. Gentle, honest, the kind that needed no titles, no THRONES. Just trust, just love. And somewhere above them, deep in orbit, Earth's defense grid activated. The final battle was coming, and humanity was ready. The sky above Earth burned with light. Alien warships descended from orbit, their engines roaring like thunder across the planet's edge. The last Varelian warlords had arrived, cold, relentless, and ready to destroy anything that stood in their way. Their message was clear. Surrender the girl, or we will take her by force. But Earth did not surrender. Human fleets rose to meet them. Defense satellites powered up. Fighters launched from hidden hangars. At the center of it all stood Jason Cole, not in a pilot's chair, not wearing a uniform, but standing on the deck of Earth's flagship beside Reelin, the last daughter of the Varelian Star Throne. She wore armor now, not to hide, but to lead. Beside her, Jason wore nothing but his patched-up jacket, still the same mechanic, still the same human who once shared his last chocolate bar with a stranger. Now that small act had become the symbol of Earth's first interstellar alliance, and it was about to be tested in orbit. The battle began. Earth's ships moved quickly, surprising the enemy with sharp maneuvers and clever tactics. Humans didn't have the strongest technology, but they had heart. They fought like they had something worth saving. Because they did. Reelin moved to the command console. Her hands glided over the controls. Ancient codes lit up the screen. Secret Varelian technology, long hidden, now awakened by her bloodline. Jason watched her. What are you doing? She answered without looking. My mother once told me, if I ever found someone brave enough to give without fear, that person would be worthy of unlocking our last hope. The screen pulsed. A deep hum filled the ship. Below the surface of Earth's moon, something began to move. A massive device, buried for centuries. The Unity engine built by Reeland's ancestors during the last days of peace, capable not of destruction, but of disabling entire fleets through harmony fields. It had only one requirement to activate. 2 bonded souls. 1 Varelian. 1 outsider. Jason stepped forward, heart pounding. What do we do? She reached out her hand. We do it together. Their fingers touched. The console lit up. The Unity engine roared to life. Across orbit, enemy ships lost power. Weapons froze. Engine stalled. Lights dimmed. The warlords screamed in confusion. No one was dying. No ships were exploding. But no one could fight. The war ended without blood. Relan fell to her knees, drained. Jason caught her before she hit the ground. You did it, he whispered. She smiled weakly. No, we did. 3 days later, the leaders of Earth and surviving Varelian elders gathered in a great hall floating in orbit. Jason stood beside Relan as she spoke to them all. She spoke of peace, of new beginnings, of shared futures. She did not demand a throne. She offered a table, and beside her, Jason stood as her bondmate, not her guard, not her subject, her equal. Months passed. Reconstruction began across the galaxy. Human engineers worked with alien builders. Shared technology flowed across borders. Old enemies sat together for the first time in centuries, and in a quiet garden on Earth, Jason opened a box. Inside was a small, fresh chocolate bar. He looked at Relan, sitting beside him beneath a tree. Do you remember? He asked, smiling. She laughed softly. How could I forget? He tore the wrapper, broke it in half, offered her the first piece. She took it, smiling, then leaned against him. From now on, she said, our empire will begin with kindness. And together, under the sun of a once lonely world, they built something new, not with force, but with love, with trust, with one small gift that changed everything.